One more.
We're waiting just a little bit. Soon.
Almost there. Countdown. Ryan is back, so we're sending this out to a lot more people.
We're good.
Okay.
All right.
I think we're going.
Hey, welcome to Hyperbaric Plus. We're doing our podcast with Keith at prevailovercancer.com. And we're going to circle back around and talk about natural killer cells again.
Yes.
A lot of, if you follow anybody on YouTube, there's a lot of conversation right now about some studies that just came out. And Dr. Soon has a new,
Right.
I don't know to call it a vaccine or an injectable, I think would probably be but he has an injectable that brings your immune system up and supports your natural killer cells.
That's right.
So give us what we need to understand about natural killer cells.
Sure. Natural killer cells are natural, of course, but they're a white blood cell that is derived from leukocytes, which are the a white blood cell that fights infections. And these leukocytes are also called lymphocytes. Actually, more specifically, lymphocytes are a precursor to T cells and B cells and natural killer cells. So there's like three groups of cells that come from the lymphocytes, part of the leukocytes. So actually a white blood cell count. One of the things I look at with my clients, no matter what their health condition, I'm looking at the ratio of the different monocyte and leukocyte and neutrophil levels. And if the lymphocyte numbers are lower, that's suggesting a problem. And so that is suggesting that there's some inflammation going on. Their immune system may not be as optimal level to fight infections, whatever that may be. You know, y'all do a lot with Lyme's, and so it's actually very important for Lyme's. I was not aware of that until I actually did more of a deep dive as I was preparing this handout. But even for Lyme's and parasites, virus infections and cancer, even autoimmune diseases, the balance of that is very important, and so it helps get rid of cells that aren't supposed to be there. And so the natural killer cells are kind of interesting. So they actually, will attach onto a cell that's not supposed to be there, and literally pours into it. Matter of fact, one of the ingredients is active. It's called a perforin, I think, something like that, and some enzymes that pour into and drill a hole into cells and damage them. And then they start kind of leaking, ingredients out of the cell, and then the rest of the immune system goes, oh no, we've got to get rid of that. And then the rest of the immune system starts attacking it. So it's kind of like one of those first steps. We all have cells that we're not supposed to have and in our body, and natural killer cells are one of those things that helps to address that and kill that.
And fasting
yes,
addresses that.
Definitely. So there's definitely food. We're going to talk about food and lifestyle and supplements. And so in the lifestyle area, actually, it's a combination of fasting, part of the lifestyle type things, but intermittent fasting, for example, going long enough without food, does support the immune system, and the immune system is a lot more responsive to help get rid of cancer foods. Eating poorly, like a lot of carbohydrates, actually weakens the immune system, and so we do have to be very, very careful about that. And then stress weakens the immune system. When we are in a stressful situation, especially day after day, the cortisol levels goes up, and cortisol, or whether it be our natural cortisol and cortisone that our body makes, or synthetic cortisones, will weaken the immune system. So, matter of fact, there's interesting studies showing that people that have to take cortisones during cancer treatment don't live as long as people that don't take them. And so I'm always trying to help my clients to come up with ways to not have to take it, but to be able to convince their practitioners that they don't need to take them. And so or go with the lowest dose possible to ramp up the immune system. So I can think of several cases where we were able to help get the person off of their cortisone, wean them off of that, with the doctor's approval, but to strengthen up the immune system. So stress is going to be very important. Let me glance at my list here, just make sure that if there's any other lifestyle type things. Sleep. Sleep is very important.
Yeah. Who does that?
Yeah. Well, and matter of fact, I wish I didn't have to sleep. I've got so many things I want to do, and matter of fact, it's like, at 9 o'clock last night, and I'm working on a webinar, a workshop, I so wanted to keep working on that, but I know that I don't need to do that. That is not good for me. And matter of fact, this morning when I woke up and started working on that same project, it's like, okay, I knew exactly what to do. Last night I was struggling, so I was,
Keith, I tell you what, 2 years ago, I started watching a lot of YouTubes, and they talked about how important sleep was. But I literally, I felt guilty. If I went to bed that early, I'm like, no, you got to stay with it, dude. You got work to do. Let's get this done. And now I've resigned to the fact that if I want to live longer, I'm going to have to get that sleep. And
That's right.
I still wrestle with, I wake up and I can't go back to sleep more often than I want to admit.
Well, and part of that
making it better.
is going to be the cortisol.
I know it's
in the morning, our cortisol levels go up in the morning. That wakes us up without the alarm clock. And so I do have to take ashwagandha herb at night to help keep me from doing that. Okay. So otherwise, I start waking up at 3.
Well, I wake up at 3 and then I do all the wrong things. I have to turn on the most boring YouTube I can find.
Oh, yeah.
And with the captions, and I finally fall back to sleep. But, I'm talking 30 minutes to 2 hours.
Yeah.
That I just cannot go back to sleep.
Right. And so it's hard to go to sleep once we're awake like that and the cortisol is high. Cortisol is a stimulant. It raises blood glucose. And the purpose of that is so we can get up and get going, start doing our day without having to, we don't have to have the coffee. We don't have to eat right away, and gives that energy to go about our day. So, and then the other thing is going to be exercise. And so, another core thing, we talk about this all the time, but moderate exercise, not a lot. So exercise can also be stressful. And so, for example, there's studies showing in soldiers that are going through basic training. They're in not a great situation, very stressful. They're exercising, they're working hard, and but they have a tendency to get colds and flu. Of course, they're also a lot of times in a barracks situation. They're close with other people, but they're in a weakened situation. They found out that if they can and make sure that they're getting their sleep and that they're actually taking things to ramp up their natural killer cells, actually beta-glucans, in this case, they were actually did studies with that. The soldiers didn't get colds and flu. They did not get as sick, from during that basic training. So, but similar thing can happen with overtraining for any type of a sport, marathon runners or anything extreme sports. We can overdo it. So moderate exercise is a rule, and so kind of sweet spot appears to be about 30 minutes a day of exercise and kind of a moderate intensity, but enough to get your heart rate up. And then method I like to do what's called HIIT, high intensity interval training, 1 minute exercise, and then a minute of stretching, resting, 1 minute of exercise. Enough exercise to get your heart rate up, and it could be resistance, it could be weightlifting, it could be floor exercises like push-ups or jumping jacks or squats or lunges, crunches, resistance training, or you can do running that way too. Run for 1 minute and then walk for 1 minute. Run for 1 minute, walk for 1 minute. I like a variety of type things. It doesn't have to be one, but it takes at least 30 minutes a day, at least 5 days a week.
So I've always wondered, because where is a good resource to identify the HVR, heart variability rate? So where's a good place to identify for your situation, what do I want that to be?
So yes, there's kind of like an ideal exercise heart rate, and so if your heart rate's low, it's just not going to have much impact. We have to get a heart rate up high enough to pump the blood through the body, and at that little bit higher heart rate, we're going to burn more calories. And so burning calories means that we burn off, belly fat, for example, or excess body fat stores. But if we get too high, now if the heart rate gets up high, the body can't burn fat for energy, and it switches over to glucose. And actually that glucose, if glucose isn't readily available, is going to break down the muscle and the liver to get to the glycogen. So that's going to be the purpose of the HIT program, a minute of exercise and a minute of rest, or resistance for, do a set of exercises and then you reset that, move to the next station or set up the weights for a different type thing, about a minute, and then you get back and do another group of exercises.
And if you do a fast, a lot of people think if you're doing a prolonged fast, 3 to 5 day fast, that, well, if I work out while I'm doing this, that'll be beneficial.
Right.
Not the case.
Yeah, we have to be a little more careful
Yeah.
in a fasting situation because we don't have those carbs.
Right.
And so we do have to be more careful about that. And I do modify my exercise program. Matter of fact, so I do fast during the daytime until noon. So I don't do a whole lot of exercise or activity, not a lot of activity during the day, during the morning. And so I eat at noon and have my snacks and have dinner. But anyway, so that means I'm going to exercise in the afternoon. And the goal of that is to provide me the energy. The exercise is also going to burn off the carbs and calories, but also it's going to help me to gain, a little bit more muscle instead of breaking down the muscle. Type of an issue like that. So moderate exercise, sleep, and intermittent fasting are kind of like some core basic lifestyle type things to help out with that. So, and then let's see here. I'm going to go through a list of diseases that are related to low natural killer cell function, and that's going to include viral infections. All viruses. It doesn't make a difference. Chronic viruses that are always in our body, Epstein-Barr, HPV, things like that. And there's cancers that are caused by those, so that's very important. Cancers, autoimmunity, so it helps to kind of get the right RA level, rheumatoid arthritis level, for example, MS and lupus, several of these. I have a history of rheumatoid arthritis, and I used to test positive years ago, and now I test negative, but I'm also more careful about what I do, everything I do, just trying to be more targeted. Even Alzheimer's. And so we also work a lot with dementia type issues, but even inflammation in the brain is going to cause damage to the brain, and that could even be an initiator of cells breaking down, damaging another cell damage, developing into Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and Huntington's disease and things like that. So,
isn't there a component there of misfolding? I mean, that's all about tau and the misfolding of.
Right.
And I don't know enough really, but when you hear that and you start watching other things and they talk about misfolding, pay attention because it's all about diet. It's what you're consuming.
Yes, exactly.
And your exercise level.
That's right. And then, let's see, there are tests available. They're not common ones. And so, but I'll do a lymphocyte blood test. That's a CBC, complete blood cell count. And then the lymphocyte is the test that I look at. But that's just a precursor. That's not the actual natural killer cells. But once again, if the lymphocytes are kind of like low, normal, or low, that's actually in cancer, that's a major issue. That means that person is going to be really struggling to fight the cancer. And so, chemotherapy, treatments, radiation, whatever, immunotherapy requires our immune system to attack those cancer cells. So therefore, we want to support the natural killer cells to enhance all these treatments. But there is what's called a matter of fact, by the way, before I forget, this handout is available on my website, and probably at hyperbarics.plus, also hyperbaric.plus.
Hyperbaric.
Singular, not plural, and .plus, and then also on my website, the Learning Center website. At the Learning Center page, at the bottom, I have this handout, and then also I have a page devoted to natural killer cells on my blog. I have the handout also on that page. So you can get that, so you don't have to always write everything down. But there's also what's called a CD3-CD56. That is actually a natural killer cell test. Not common and kind of expensive. So it's hard to do those tests. There's some other ones that actually measure even some of the activation chemicals associated with that. But that CD3-CD56 is an actual count of the natural killer cells. So that could be an option on that. So another thing that I want to concentrate on is that can be foods. And so certain foods can support the immune system. We've known that. But more specifically, there's going to be a short list of items that are really great at supporting natural killer cells. And one of them is going to be including green tea. And so green tea is good. there's extracts called EGCG. Those are available capsules typically as a supplement, but matcha or matcha green tea is ground up matcha tea leaves, and it's at least 10 times stronger than green tea. So it's interesting. So actually there's studies showing that people that drink 10 cups a day of green tea have a reduced risk of cancers. Well, that's a lot of green tea. So you can do matcha, you can do a couple of cups of that a day and have the same effect as trying to drink green tea all day long. And so there's other benefits too, even the fiber from the tea leaves, a lot more other chemicals and antioxidants in that. So that's one of my favorite beverages. I have that. Besides coffee, I have I think the proper way is matcha. I drink matcha every single day now, almost always. And then medical mushrooms. And so that list is actually pretty extensive. Let's see, I think I've got it written down. So even simple, all mushrooms are going to help. Even the white button mushrooms that are at the grocery store that are not, we probably don't think of them as being like all that great, but they do help. They just haven't actually been studied very much. But the reishi and turkey tail, chaga, cordyceps, maitake, and shiitake mushrooms all are great. And so, matter of fact, I like to, we always have mushrooms in the refrigerator so we can do it. And we were talking about foods earlier. My wife, she doesn't follow recipes, but she takes those mushrooms and she's going to put them in the stir fry, she's going to put them in the skillet, she's going to put them in the soup, almost everything. And so we always have mushrooms available.
Where do you get something other than the button? Where do you shop to get those kinds of mushrooms?
Well, you may have to go to a nicer or more expensive grocery store, or actually a health food store. Mm-hmm. So I typically go to Sprouts and get mine because that's what's close to me. And Asian markets. Asian markets are fantastic. So not far from us, about 6 miles away, we have a Sprouts, and then we also have an Asian market. As a matter of fact, the Asian market has a lot of options. And so Asia, but these are very common. As a matter of fact, in Asia, some of these mushrooms and extracts from them, we're going to talk about these in just a second, are actually standard care for cancer because they ramp up the immune system, and people that take these items live longer. So it's a standard type thing in Asia, for these mushrooms. And then garlic, also fresh garlic. I'm not a fan of garlic pills. There's actually studies showing garlic tablets and capsules may actually make things worse and increase risk of cancers. But garlic foods are fantastic, to help out with the immune system. Berries, and so all the berries are great. Blueberries and goji definitely have a lot of research supporting them. And then omega-3s. And, omega-3s actually provide the fats that make up the cell wall of every cell in our body. And every cell in our body has 2 layers of fat. It's called a phospholipid bilayer, 2 layers of fat. But the dietary fats that we eat make up that. And when we have the soft, flexible omega-3s, now the cells are more flexible. That's what this natural killer cell actually has got. It appendages and it attaches and it crawls over, and if it's got the good omega-3 fats in it versus the thicker, worse fats or even synthetic fats that we can be exposed to, those are hard, and now the cell, that natural killer cell, can't crawl over as good. It just can't function as good. So omega-3s are really great. So we're talking about fresh caught or ocean caught salmons, sardines. As far as a processed fish, is one of the better ones. Small fish, not as toxic in mercury and lead and things like that. And then flax and chia and hemp and walnuts are the seeds and nuts that have the highest amount of omega-3s. Other nuts and seeds are okay, but the chia seeds, flax, hemp, and walnuts are the best for the omega-3s. As a matter of fact, studies showing walnuts, eating walnuts every single day reduces the risk of dying from cancer by 20 to 30%. Something like that. So it's a core part of my, what I call the cancer food tactics outline, is actually a serving of nuts every day, and walnuts are probably one of the best. And so actually I do nuts and seeds. I do a serving of nuts and a serving of seeds every single day.
So we're doing the yogurt, and so every day I have yogurt with walnuts in it and Ceylon, Ceylon cinnamon.
Okay.
But it's the good cinnamon.
good cinnamon.
I didn't know there was good.
Well, yeah, there's some that are better, and remember, we're learning more, and so we pay attention to cinnamon, because some of the cinnamons are sourced from places that may have more lead in them, and so it's a combination. As they grind it up, so in that grinding process of making any food, matter of fact, even baby foods, I found this, that, when they make that food, they grind it up. To grind it up, well, you got metal parts that are grinding stuff. And so those metal parts and gears grinding together have a tendency to break off. And so whatever that alloy was in that metal is what's going to be going up onto the food. So, but also even all plants come from the ground, and ground can have toxic metals, and depends on where it's grown as to what those toxic metals are. So we're going to learn more about cinnamon, about lead levels. Evidently seems to be an issue with some cinnamons. I still do cinnamon, but we need to learn more about that and pay attention to that. And then, so we are talking about the lifestyle things, about moderate exercise, stress reduction, quality sleep. And by the way, since we do have Ryan here to help us out, submit your questions. We got them in last week too, but submit questions. So Ryan's going to print those off for us and give us questions. Our roundtable group's going to ask questions too in a little bit. So start submitting those questions so we can get those. So supplements. And so also just a quick disclaimer, so the FDA and other government, different countries, do not approve supplements to be treating health conditions. They do have impacts, but they're not approved for treatments. But zinc glycinate is critical, and probably like the number one thing that is easy to test for and easy to supplement. It supports the natural killer cells. It's required. We have to have it. The natural killer cells have to have it. And there's a zinc taste test available. There's also a new test I've started doing, and actually it's a urine test, a test strip. You can actually dip this test strip into a urine sample and measure your magnesium and zinc levels, and at home. And it also tests for urinary tract infections and several other things too.
Is it a test strip?
It's a test strip.
Wow.
It's really neat. And so it's not very expensive. And it's like, I can't remember, probably 100 test strips for like $25. And so I've started doing that, because if you're low in zinc, you're going to have all kinds of health problems and not as good a response and outcomes for cancer.
So where are you going to put the link to that specific test strip?
I will put that in the natural killer cell spot. I do have a link on my website about Amazon resources too. I already have that on there. It's called a UTI, urinary tract infection test strip, and I have a Amazon link to that.
Man, how many people have UTIs all the time?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to measure that?
We have that at the house. If there's any question, everybody's different. Not everybody has, tells, about urinary tract infection, like pain, and on urination and such. My wife actually, her tell is actually tingling fingers. It's weird. And so if she starts noticing that her fingers are a little bit tingly, she'll test strip and find out if she's got a urinary tract infection. But so another one of my little favorite things to do for that, since you mentioned urinary tract infections, is actually D-mannose supplement. That's a sugar, D-MANNOSE. At a high dose, actually, our body can't use it. It doesn't raise your blood glucose. Cancer cells try to use it, they can't. They're preoccupied, and helps to starve cancer cells. So D-mannose is one of my favorite things as part of a protocol for the cancer tactics, prevail cancer tactics. So D-mannose actually, but it takes almost like 2,000 milligrams 4 times a day. Early morning, before lunch, before dinner, bedtime, type of a thing. And we're having some remarkable results of doing that. So, as a matter of fact, zinc helps with urinary tract infections too. So, go figure. And then also a supplement called AHCC, which is active hexose correlated compound. And it actually is one ingredient that's found in mushrooms, but they've actually, and some yeast and things like that, they've actually extracted that out, purified it, and it's actually a core component in the Asian cancer treatment programs. And so it's got alpha glucans, which are water soluble, easily absorbed. The beta glucans, which is going to be the next one I'm going to mention, beta glucans are available as supplements, are more of a fat soluble, and they're a little bit different shape, and they're not as well absorbed, but great research on those too. So in the Western world, traditionally, we've been doing beta-glucans. In the Asian areas, they've been doing the alpha-glucans. Great product. Both of those are actually ingredients in mushrooms, once again. And then curcumin, one of my favorite things, that's an extract from turmeric, also reduces inflammation, and it helps with natural killer cells to work better. So curcumin, as far as like cancer and Alzheimer's, but just cancer alone, there are over 9,000 research articles on curcumin and cancer. There's more research on that one item than there are on almost all other herbs put together. So it's one of my core things that I go with. It's not well absorbed, and so tricks to that include, looking for items with black pepper. My favorite is one by Ultra Botanica that has what's called protosorb in it. They actually physically bind their curcumin with a protein, and so now instead of a fat-soluble herb, it's actually a protein, and our body loves protein, and it readily absorbs those protein. It's absorbed through the stomach and intestines and raises blood levels, and that's my favorite. And then vitamin D also, so vitamin D receptors in our body and on our immune system. Here's a vitamin D receptor on this cell. And so vitamin D, actually this cell is going to be a natural killer cell. And so vitamin D attaches to that receptor called a VDR, vitamin D receptor. And so once that cell, in this case a natural killer cell, has that vitamin D on it, now it's going to work right. And so, therefore, vitamin D is critical for the immune system. We found out with pandemics that people that had higher vitamin D levels did better, or if they had an infection, they got the vitamin D infusion, they did better. Now, some of us are actually challenged in that area, and so my vitamin D receptor doesn't work. No wonder my family has a higher risk of cancer and some other issues. And so that means that actually from both parents, my vitamin D receptor doesn't work. So vitamin D, actually that receptor is not there. So my natural killer cell doesn't have that. So it struggles. So therefore, I need to be doing a lot of other things to help them to work, because the vitamin D is not going to be part of that picture. And so I have a tendency to be low in zinc, so I do take the zinc. I take a lot of things, to help out with that. But vitamin D does help out, and it takes typically more like 2,000 up to 5,000 IUs. That means 125 micrograms a day, but you have to follow up with blood tests to make sure that you're getting enough of that. So a little bit of a summary. So by the way, submit your questions. We're going to take questions here in just a second too from our table, and about primarily, I'm thinking about immune system support, other cancer questions or anything. So open mic, I guess, in a way. So natural killer cells are first responders. They're the first thing that go out. They start attacking things that aren't supposed to be there, parasites, infections, cancer, for example, and then that stimulates a cascade of effects. The immune system starting to recognize that and to help get rid of that. Those things aren't supposed to be there. There are blood tests available. That CD3-CD56 count is an option, hard to get, but look at lymphocytes. If the lymphocytes are low compared to monocytes, or lymphocytes are low compared to neutrophils, that's what I'm looking at. So if you're at a chart, you see the lymphocytes low, the others are higher, that's a concern. And then a proper lifestyle and diet, along with targeted supplements, help the natural killer cells to function better. So we're going to open it up for questions now. So submit your questions. And
10 minutes.
10 minutes? Okay, we got about 10 minutes. Okay. And so questions?
You mentioned ashwagandha.
Yes.
How much do you take, and do you have a preferred brand?
So ashwagandha, yes. So ashwagandha, actually there's several different strengths that are available, and it's a little bit confusing because there's everything from the raw herb to concentrated forms of it. I do use one by Designs for Health called Triganda, and it's a good one. Another one by Zymogen that I've used, Zymogen calls theirs ashwagandha 35. It's like a 35% extract. And so I've used that too. Actually, that one is a tiny capsule. It's actually very small. I have to take 2 of those or 1 of the Triganda like an hour before bedtime, and then I sleep until 6 o'clock instead of waking up at 3 on that. So, yes.
Do you buy that on Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon, I've got a link on my website.
Okay.
Also, I have another resource page for Designs for Health with a link to the ashwagandha. So there's a few items there, Designs for Health, that I just love. I love their products, so all that. Okay, any other questions?
So, Ryan, you got any questions yet?
Yeah, they're coming in.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, he's getting our questions, okay.
You want to close off early?
So what pushes down natural killer cells? What is it that we're doing in our everyday normal life that is bad? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously oncology is going to be, we're taking chemo drugs,
Stressful situation, yeah.
stressful situations. So, I mean, so you've given us the things that enhance our immune system. That's our natural killer cells. We're going
Yes.
to boost that.
I think probably number one thing, well, or a combination thing is our lifestyle, is that, we're using artificial lights, extending our day. We have tendency to probably work too hard and too long, many of us. I'm guilty about that. And not eating right. And we work too hard, have too much stress.
What about, so I just saw a deal about Starlink that really concerns me. I don't want to be, the sky is falling, because I don't want that satellite to hit me. But what I'm hearing is that they're saying if you have stock in AT&T and some of the other carriers, you might want to rethink that because of what's coming down the pike with Starlink.
Right.
Right now, if you were standing in a hospital and you were at the window and you had Starlink on your phone, you were Starlink internet, you would have service if you were standing at that window. If you walk back into the hospital or manufacturing or a big office building and you're away from the windows and you've got the protection of the roof, then you're probably not going to get coverage. So what they're going to do
They crank up the power.
is they are getting ready to crank up the power to where it will penetrate those kinds of structures so that they can manage having seamless coverage.
Yes.
And so we're talking metal roofs, right? I mean, I'm talking hospitals and businesses. What about that comp roof on our house? You don't have any problem receiving Starlink in your home because it's not metal. It's going right through that
Right.
comp roof. So what are we taking in already? And if they're going to make it to where anywhere in that metal building you're going to get coverage, what is that going to look like?
Great question. There's a lot of unknowns about that. So, matter of fact, traditional satellite signals are not that strong. Those satellites.
They're being received by a dish.
Yeah,
They're not going through a roof.
Exactly, not going through a roof. As a matter of fact, we use a satellite phone for emergencies in the mountains when we're camping and horseback riding and such. But that satellite phone doesn't work like what you see on TV, where you can just whip it out and talk inside a building. As a matter of fact, you have to be out in the open. You can't be under a tree, and you've only got a couple of minutes for that satellite to go by. Now, there are fancier ones that are stronger. There are satellites that are probably stronger, but overall satellite signals have not been that strong. But, that is a change that's kind of like 5G.
Right.
And satellite. We're being exposed to a lot more things nowadays. Some things that we can't control, but we have to compensate and do other things that we can control. We can control what we eat. We can control how much exercise we're doing. We can control, our supplements, and we can, control stress to a certain extent. And so, part of that stress, one of the important things is going to be what I call therapeutic breathing. And so, to reduce that stress, that's something that I have to do. And we talked about this. You do it too.
That's how I go back to sleep.
Exactly, go sleep at
Eventually.
night, and is to do the therapeutic breathing and concentrate on intentional breathing, in through your nose, breathing out through your mouth, and counting out loud, well, in my mind rather, but counting while I'm breathing out, and it preoccupies your brain so you're not thinking about life stresses or treatment stresses or anything like that. So, but that therapeutic breathing is extremely important as an anti-stress type
You know what
activity.
I think I'm going to do? I'm going to start a Faraday cage business that we're going to build Faraday cages around beds.
Because
Because if you're sleeping 8 hours, if you can be free of radiation for 8 hours. I mean, they're already out there. There's a lot of people doing it. I mean, that's nothing new.
Yes.
But there are a lot of people that are enclosing their bed in a Faraday cage.
Yes, well, and I suggest that you, people that are doing that also check and make sure it works, because I've investigated some Faraday cage type.
Oh, good.
Programs.
We're going to have a show on Faraday cages in the near future, since I brought all that
Things
up.
that, but it's kind of interesting, and the physics involved in that radio wave, and so it doesn't take much of an opening for a radio wave to go through something, so it's kind of interesting, so, on that. So yes, I've studied that quite a bit.
Well,
so.
good. So we're going to talk when we get off camera here.
So,
Go ahead, shoot.
If my immune system is weak, does that mean my natural killer cells are low too? Well, it depends on that test. My immune system's probably weak. I was one of the first ones that got the COVID infection, and in the United States, after the East and West Coast and the Central United States, let's say in Oklahoma, and so nobody else in my family got it. I was the one that got it. Actually, my son, he got it. He didn't have any symptoms whatsoever. We tested him. He was negative. I felt it, and I did fine. It was a minor thing. It was not as bad as the flu. It was scary, but because of some people having major issues. But we have to compensate for that. So it's kind of a broad question, but also it's kind of a broad thing. But basically, to help you have to do the zinc. You have to do maybe some glucans of some type and things like that. Sleep right. So we don't know about the natural killer cells if they're low or not unless you do a test for that. What to eat for swollen feet after 6 weeks of radiation completion? So swelling in the feet could be a sign of maybe some toxins happening. And there's a couple of reasons that can happen. Actually, it depends on where the radiation is, what's happening in the body, but fluid retention in the feet, could be a sign of either the blood vessels becoming porous and allowing liquid to seep out into the other tissues. And so I use what are called bioflavonoids to strengthen the blood vessels. And there's one called diosmin that is very potent at helping with leaky blood vessels. The other issue sometimes that can happen is if a person's not eating well and not getting enough protein. Protein's required for the liver to detox and get rid of toxic chemicals. So we're looking at protein levels and albumin levels. If those are low to low normal, then that could be a definite issue on detoxing. And if we can't get rid of toxicities, the body retains that water to dilute those toxins. So we get water retention, and it can happen especially in the legs, type of an issue. Is low vitamin D really a big deal of is low vitamin D really that big of a deal for cancer or immunity? Yes, it is. And so vitamin D3 is very important. It's part of the puzzle, okay? It's part of the gears, part of that whole gear. There's 50, different gears, but if we're missing one gear, that wheel can kind of work, but we've got a chance of something else going wrong in that process. So it definitely is a big deal. It's not the only thing, so we can't rely on that. The only way to know for sure if you have enough D is to get a blood test.
So is K2 just a given that anytime you do vitamin D3, you do K2?
Yes, I like to do K2 also. Great question. And so vitamin K2 is very important. Vitamin D is really good at helping the body to absorb minerals out of the gut. So literally, vitamin D acts as a chelator, and actually it binds to your minerals in your intestines and brings them into the body. But, if you have a high vitamin D3 level, it may work too good, and now we actually have too much calcium floating around, and it may deposit that calcium in the blood vessel walls. Vitamin K2 is even better at moving that calcium into the bones. So therefore, yes, both of them are important. Usually, unless a person's taking warfarin, my clients are taking both D3 and K2 together at high doses. Matter of fact, I've actually had people doing vitamin K2 at a high dose along with nattokinase enzymes, and we can see measurably their plaque getting better and less, in their carotid arteries, because they can measure that thickness, and the blood flow improves. The thickness is decreasing, in the blood vessels within 2 months.
How do they do that? Is it ultrasound?
It's an ultrasound, yeah. Ultrasound, the jelly and the wand, and they measure the velocity. The faster the blood flow through the blood vessel, the greater the problem. That means it's smaller and narrower. It's going to squish through faster. And then what they call the thickness of the blood vessel. And actually, that thickness is plaque. And so in other words, I know a gentleman, he was able to keep from having to have a rotor-rooter, to clean that out, which is very, very risky, by actually doing enzymes and K2, and clean.
Apple cider vinegar?
No, it's nattokinase.
Okay.
Probably.
Okay.
Apple cider vinegar is probably not strong enough. Taking an enzyme. Enzymes are protein chemicals. In this case, enzymes that eat away at protein.
Okay.
And so to eat away at that plaque and soften it up. Matter of fact, a study showing that that type of thing also helps reduce the risk of Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and stroke.
And stroke, exactly. Oh, yeah.
The rotor-rooter doesn't work in that regard because it's right there by your brain.
They have a tendency to throw those particles up into the brain when they're doing that. If I take supplements like AHCC or beta-glucan, how long before I even feel a difference? Well, you may not even feel a difference. So by taking those products, they're going to ramp up your immune system, yes. You might not feel anything. You might actually, and I just let my clients know that starting a beta-glucan or alpha-glucan, AHCC, there's a possibility that you may notice increased temperature or achiness, kind of like flu symptoms. If that happens, praise the Lord, okay, that's a good sign. That means your body found something that's not supposed to be there. So that doesn't always happen, but I kind of let my clients know that. But actually, you probably won't feel a difference. This is not a magic bullet for energy at all, but it's going to help your immune system to function better. What makes NK cells stop working? Well, the things we're talking about, actually stress, nutrient deficiencies, are probably the major things. And as a person going through treatments, whatever the health issue is, or pain, even major problems, it's going to weaken our immune system due to stress type things. So stress and basic nutrients. Can an iron tablet be taken during cancer therapy if hemoglobin is a 9.2? So I can't make specific recommendations, on this type of situation, but yes, a hemoglobin at each point on hemoglobin is equal to like 1 point, or like 1 unit rather. So at 9 now they're looking at doing a transfusion. So often iron may help out, may not be the issue. Is there a bleed going on somewhere? Is the bone marrow working right? So why is that? The hemoglobin is a quantity of blood, basically, simply put. So for a person's low, the question is why? Iron may help the body to make more red blood cells to a certain extent, but then the iron in the red blood cells binds the oxygen and delivers the oxygen throughout the body. So rare cancer, a melanoma, no cure. I'm sure you know the details. My oncologist told me that there's nothing I can do to change the outcome. An oncologist said specifically you don't have to change diet. Well, diet makes a world of difference. And so we have to change the underlying situation that allowed that to happen. And so it's not just diet, but lifestyle, diet, and foods, supplements, all can have an impact, on cancer treatments.
Keith, if I may interject.
Okay.
I mean, you're too nice of a guy.
Oh, okay.
I'll be the bad cop. If you're not changing your diet after you've been diagnosed with cancer, I mean, I can't tell you how many people come in here and we start talking about, hey, what do you, and I'm nobody. I didn't run a chamber. But if I've heard enough of your clients and my clients that you're helping along. I mean, if there's some cancer places down south that have bowls of chocolate in all of their waiting rooms, you can't do that.
Right.
And I'm understanding that doctors are not having those conversations with their patients, that you can't be doing sugar, you can't be doing carbs, you can't, you've got to have those live nutrient-dense foods so that your body can fight that bad thing that's in your body.
Right.
And so you're being way too nice. I'm going to say you've got to get hooked up with somebody in nutrition, and it's important. It's an important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, very, very important. So matter of fact, I have a new webinar, workshop that I'm bringing out that's going to be talking about basic things about how to deal with the doctors. Okay,
There you go.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
You know, how do you talk to them, and without them firing you? Okay, and so because we do need some of their services and their testing, and they do have some value. I mean, they have value, yes, but we also have to be smart, and we have to make those decisions ourselves. And we can't rely upon them to do that. I'll tell a story about my truck, a diesel truck. Something's going wrong with it. I can't take it to the shade tree mechanic to have him work on it. And so because that diesel requires that engine requires somebody special. It's a $15,000, $20,000 engine. It takes somebody special for that. But then at the same time, so I take it to the specialist. Well, that diesel mechanic, he's actually so backed up that there's no way he's going to work on my wife's minivan. Yes, he probably could, but he doesn't want to fool with it. And so because that's his specialty, and so that he's busy. He has all he can do. So the doctors are the same way. They're busy. They can only do so much, and so they aren't studying and learning about other systems. So the shade tree mechanic, same thing. They don't have enough time and expertise to learn how to work on that diesel engine. So
Well, I got to say, if a doctor says nutrition's not part of the plan, that you got to find another doctor, because you're going to fight them at every turn.
yeah, you're going to find them. That's correct.
I mean, that's the easy
Right.
part to nail down. So I don't mean to be so, I get accused of being blunt.
Okay, and then, so, another question, so, what do you think about taking ivermectin from Tractor Supply? And so ivermectin is officially not approved to be taken like that. It is geared for animals, although people do take it. I do give it to my horses. I have taken it. And so the challenge is trying to find sources for that. Actually, it's becoming simpler in Tennessee. I believe it's
I
Tennessee.
thought Arkansas.
Well, Arkansas recently, but Tennessee is, they're already ramping
Right.
up. They actually have compounding pharmacies in Tennessee that are making and selling it without a prescription. Actually, there's a consultation involved with the pharmacist to get the right dose, and they're compounding it. They can't ship it across state lines because there are state laws regulating that and federal laws. But there are states, Texas even has introduced a law, Oklahoma's introduced a law, so a lot of states are introducing laws to allow ivermectin to be sold without a prescription so that we can get a purer form. The downside about the ivermectin horse paste or gel is that it's got some thickening ingredients in it. And so those thickening ingredients aren't necessarily an ideal situation.
What about the liquid?
There's a liquid that is an ivermectin injection, and it has thickening ingredients in it.
Okay.
And so, and there's just enough thickening so that when you shake that, it's so it's not like water, okay? So that it's easier to draw it up into the syringe. Excuse me. So it's not a lot, but it does have some thickening ingredients. It's not an ideal situation. I do have clients doing that. So it's almost half the strength compared to the oral horse paste. So there are people doing that. Ivermectin does have some anti-cancer type actions. There's actually quite a bit of research and a lot of research that's coming out. And I would second the question on ivermectin, so by repeating that, it looks like ivermectin would be an option. I will have immunotherapy, but it only adds a few months. So, often some of these treatments, sometimes only offer a few extra months, and they're approved. The FDA can approve a treatment because it extends life by a couple of months. And so the question is that treatment worth it? And so, so there are some studies suggesting that ivermectin kind of like makes cancer cells more susceptible to other treatments, even. So combination. So that's why I had a client yesterday that I met with, and she's starting a cancer treatment, and they're giving her 5 different chemotherapy drugs at the same time. And so they're trying to attack these cancer cells from 5 different ways at the same time for the next 3 months. So the more ways we can do that, food, lifestyle, supplements, chemotherapy, radiation, whatever, immunotherapy, the more ways that we can attack it, the better the odds are of survival. So do you have to have a biopsy done to determine if you have cancer? What is the danger in doing so? So sometimes it's hard to know for sure. They have a pretty good idea. Some scans are very specific for cancers, and so sometimes we don't know for sure without the biopsy. The advantage about a biopsy is that they can send that tissue to a lab, and the lab can actually test it more specifically for not only what kind of cancer it is, but even the DNA. So that's going to be an advantage. With the DNA, now we've got more targeted prescriptions, even supplement type options. So I'm a big proponent of doing DNA testing. A newer thing that I do encourage my clients to do is called a classification of liquid biopsies. And so it's actually a blood test and measuring the DNA of the cancer cells in your blood. So these machines are very sensitive, and they can measure sample and tell you what kind of cancer it is. And so even with that, in that particular DNA pattern, they can even suggest treatment type protocols. So the concerns about biopsies is, of course, your side effects, the procedure, the infections, potential spread. So once any kind of a surgery, and we're going in and we're cutting into something or poking into something, if there's going to be blood loss, something coming out, there's that potential concern. Although officially the research says, meaning the medical research says biopsies are not a concern, but that's been 20 years since they studied that. So, but sometimes we have to have biopsies. You have to have that cut out sometimes.
So I spoke to a client yesterday, and she goes, and she's about to call you and get involved with our group. And she said, I went to the doctor and they wanted to do a biopsy. And I don't think she saw the look on my face, but I said, you might rethink that or ask around, because some of my clients, they actually went to another clinic out of state, had the tumor removed, and then they biopsied it.
Right.
So they had that tissue and tumor, everything encapsulated, then they biopsied it. But they, I guess, don't do that. I mean, they have to do a needle biopsy.
Right.
There's not a standard of care there. So she said, well, I knew that probably wasn't good. I left before we did the biopsy, and I haven't figured out my path forward. So anyway, expect a call.
Okay. So can black seed oil stimulate estrogen? So is it okay to take if there's a hormonal like breast cancer? Well, black seed oil, actually plants may have a little bit of an estrogenic type property. And the plant estrogens, can attach to, I mentioned like the natural killer cell, that receptor. Well, so cells, good cells and cancer cells have hormone receptors, in this case with like a breast cancer. And so a plant estrogen may be able to attach to that, receptor, and if it's a hormone receptor, then that cell is actually satisfied and starts doing its thing. If it's a cancer cell, that means it may start growing inappropriately. So black seed oil does have some hormone type activities in it. Overall, it is known to be actually a major anti-cancer type effect. Matter of fact, there's an active ingredient called something like thymoquine, which they even extract and concentrate and use for some cancer treatments. So, so nuts and seeds I think are great. We do have to really a little more careful with oils, and black seed oil would be one of those. Is concentrating. How do they make it? Is it organic? So I'm trying to evaluate those kind of things too. But so black seed oil, may be worth, and there's actually a lot of studies showing that it does have some significant anti-cancer effects.
So we had a pretty good turnout on our questions today, so you got some work ahead of you, because Keith answers all those questions after the event is over. So he'll post those questions and answers. We're pushed up to the hour. A lot of my clientele showing up for our next dive, and that's kind of a giveaway that we need to move on. So, man, there's just so much information, and if you're out there dealing with cancer, it'll make your head spin. We have somebody new come in each week, and I try to get everybody to back off and be easy. Let's ease into this, because there's a lot.
Oh, there's a lot. Yes.
And so anyway, if you're dealing with that, Keith's a great resource, prevailovercancer.com. We are a non-medical cancer support therapy doing hyperbaric oxygen, and it enhances your immune system. It just boosts your immune system, and that's what this is all about. Your immune system can fight this off. if you let it, if you encourage your body to work properly. So Keith with Prevail Over Cancer, I'm Paul with Hyperbaric.plus is our website. Hyperbaric Plus is the name of our business. Come see us. And until next week, do you have any idea on what our topic will be?
No?
I love that. Well, what's neat is he does so much research that this next week, all these studies will come out and he'll pick
Either
one.
a study or
Yeah.
a concern a client has.
Yeah.
It
There
just
you go.
brings to mind, okay, I need to talk about this because I know other people have that same problem.
Yep. So be with us next week. Thanks for joining in.